Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Loving how verbal we are this morning with all the hellos. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you.
Oh,
Let's keep it going. Welcome. Hello, hello. It's great to see so many people on camera too. Well, it's good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yes, it is.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes.
How many languages can we get in the room for good afternoon?
Nachmittag.
Bonjour.
Ah.
Bon après-midi.
下午好。
Wow.
I love it.
Hey,
Oh, we heard someone else said something. We missed it.
which one? The big gates?
What language is that?
It's German. It's about the same as Wuhao.
Ah, sehr gut.
How with you, Vietnamese.
Fantastic. I love that. What a way to start. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome.
Buenas tardes.
Buenos tardes. And all of the other greetings that we heard this morning from various languages. Hi, everybody, and welcome to vocabulary let's try this again. Welcome to Working Together to Learn Vocabulary Development Through Games. My name is Tiffany Ross. I'm the manager of Network Learning and Development here at McHale. And as always, really excited to see all of you, some familiar faces, some new faces. It's always great to get everyone together for some good professional development. Just a friendly note to everybody as we get started, if you could go ahead and mute yourselves for the presentation, and then we can press unmute when we have opportunities to speak out and share. We will be checking for unmuted people throughout. So if we mute you, it's not personal. It's just for the the flow of the workshop. So welcome to Working Together to Learn Vocabulary Development Through Games. During today's workshop, Dr. Jacqueline Nenchin will share with us key learning principles and effective approaches to vocabulary instruction, as well as a variety of games that you can use in your adult ESOL classroom. A highlight of what Jackie will be sharing with us today is the ability to adapt these activities to different learner levels within your classrooms. And while many of the activities that Jackie will be sharing with us today were intentionally designed for the in-person classroom, they can indeed be adapted to online instruction for those of you who are still teaching online. And at the end of the workshop, we'll have an optional 30-minute informal info sharing session. So that's from 1 until 1:30. You can attend if you'd like. And we'll be just workshopping together a resource of activities that Jackie will be sharing with us. And we'll work together to talk about how we can adapt those in-person activities to online instruction. So if you're available after today's presentation at 1 to stay on for that idea sharing session, we'd love to have you. To get a feel of where we all are currently, if we're teaching online, virtually, or hybrid, we're going to launch a poll so we know what's happening in our Montgomery County programs. So Halima, could you please launch that poll for us?
Does everyone see it?
I don't.
I can see it now.
Okay. I'm not able to, so I'm just going to trust you, Halima. Could you just read out what those two questions are?
Yes. The first one is, how are you currently teaching classes online? The answers are coming in. The second question is, how will you teach class in the new year? Right now, it seems online is, okay, it's moving.
We can just do another 15 seconds and we can share and see where we land on that. Yes, if you don't see the poll, feel free to type it in the chat. How are you currently teaching classes? And then how do you plan to be teaching classes in the new year?
Well, we have 100% answers for the first question. Online is 81%, in person is 27%, hybrid 5%, currently not teaching 9%. The second question, how will you teach classes in the new year? In person 26%, online 74%, hybrid 13%, don't plan to teach classes 4%.
Okay, fantastic. So for our visual learners, could you share that? Push the share button on that or show results.
Yes. Do you see it?
I see some nods. I can't, but others can. So fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you everyone for sharing. So it sounds like we're largely teaching online still right now. And then for the upcoming semester, can you share those top two again, Halima?
Yes, 74% online and in person 26%.
Okay. So for those of you who are planning to continue to teach online, you'll gain a lot from today, but also we definitely invite you to stay if you're able to that for this additional half hour to think about how we can translate some of these activities to the online classroom.
I'm gonna stop sharing now.
Yes, you can stop sharing. Thank you so much, Halima. So I'm excited now to present our speaker for today. I've had the pleasure of seeing Dr. Jackie Nenchin, her presentation at Maryland TESOL, and have had the opportunity to speak with her a bit over these past couple of weeks in preparation for today's workshop, and she's awesome. So Dr. Jacqueline Nenchin received her master's in TESOL from Molloy College and a PhD in linguistics from Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. Jacqueline is a former ESL instructor for K through 12 in Vineland Public Schools in New Jersey. She has also taught adult ESL at Nassau Community College and various community-based organizations. Currently, as a professor at Molloy College in the graduate TESOL program in the English department, she teaches graduate courses in linguistics and grammar, as well as undergraduate courses in composition and linguistics. Her research interests include systemic functional linguistics, it's a mouthful, and its application in pedagogy and translation, and the role of language in social life and second language learning. So with that, I'll pass the floor to you, Miss Jackie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored to meet you all. I wish it were in person, but we're still stuck in the COVID world. Kind of a long nightmare. So I'm presenting to you from New York, where I work and live. Molloy College is about 20 minutes east of Kennedy Airport. If you've been to Kennedy Airport, you will know where that is. And we're about an hour, under an hour from New York City by train or car. So that's my base, and my description was, I think, pretty thorough. I would add that I have taught for 3 years in a federal prison under the auspices of my community college in South Jersey, a place called Fairton Federal Correctional Institution. And I've also taught in some drug rehabilitation centers that were residential. So I've had some experience in alternative ed as well as adult ed. So I'm not here to talk about me, but vocabulary development through games. Most of my life revolves around grammar and vocabulary and writing.
Oh, teacher, that's my big.
So I'm going to talk to you as much as possible today about some issues with vocabulary learning for our learners and our teachers, and hopefully some ideas for games and online activities. This presentation isn't designed specifically for online, but as Tiffany told you, she will have a special addition to the workshop at the end where you can look at how to adapt some of these activities for online learning. But hopefully we will get beyond online learning soon. So the objectives are to identify problems with teaching and learning English vocabulary in light of research, though this won't be a theoretical presentation, and how to define and provide examples of receptive and productive approaches to vocabulary teaching, and discussing the 4 skills that are involved in games and teaching and learning. So I wanted to start with a question. Why is teaching English vocabulary difficult? So I could give you about 30 seconds if you want to put an answer to this question in the chat. Tiffany will share with me some of the ideas that you have. Why is teaching English vocabulary difficult?
I'll be happy to share what we have coming in. Mary Murphy says, there's so much to learn, exclamation point. Judy says, more words than, whoa, they're coming in fast now, 1 second. She says, more words than most languages, sheer size. Brunetta says, teaching difficult because some of the English language is a little confusing for others. Shayla, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, because there are rules for spelling, but then no rules. Zeta, so many exceptions to pronunciation. Tyra, there are many different words for the same thing. Jill, lots of synonyms. Stacy, the sounds of some letters change in words or are silent. Tao, can have many meanings. Anna, memory involved in the process of decoding takes time and patience. Many more are rolling in. That's a good start.
Okay, that's a good start. And so in your comments, you've actually gotten to the problem in one way or another. So just some thoughts that we'll talk about. It is a daunting task. There's a long list of words. We'll talk about tiers, vocabulary tiers, and the wrong approaches and the right approaches. So why is it a daunting task? Some of you said there are more words, several words for the same thing. It has to do with the historical development of English primarily. And the blending of Anglo-Saxon words, of Germanic origins, with Latin words brought in by the Normans, or Latin and French words brought in by the Normans when they invaded England. And then other things to do with borrowings from Greek immigrants bringing words to the United States in particular. And here also Native American words being added to the language. Of course, the development in Britain and Australia are a little different because of the immigrant issues, but still English shares these across all the various dialects. So an example of an Anglo-Saxon word would be pig. Yet when we go to a restaurant, we don't order pig, right? We order pork. And the word pork is.
Sorry, Jackie.
Am I muted?
You're accidentally muted. Okay, there you
Okay.
go.
Sorry. So I was just talking about the English word pig. We don't order food by asking for pig in the restaurant. We order asking for pork, which is the Norman word. The same thing with beef. We don't ask for cow or bull. We ask for beef. Again, the French word. So that means that for many, many common words, there are 2 versions. So learners have to really be prepared for a very challenging time when they're learning English words. How about words of Greek origin? particularly concerning sciences, biology, geology, any O-L-O-G-Y words, for example, they're words of Greek origin. So those also have to be learned. Words of immigrant origin here in various parts of the United States, certain immigrants settled and left behind or added to the language words. For example, in New York, we have the word stoop, which many people would not be using outside of New York to mean the front steps. And that's because Dutch influenced New York English, because the early settlers of New York were originally Dutch. After, of course, in addition to the Native Americans. So, and then Native American words. You can probably think of some Native American words. In our area, we have a lot of towns with Native American names, but also words like moccasin or squash, right? So this is daunting for even native speakers at times, and for non-native speakers, it is problematic. It means that the list of words in English go beyond 1 million words. And to be fluent in English, you, of course, don't have to know that many words, but you do have to know quite a few. So the 100 most common words in English are mostly of Anglo-Saxon origin. Words like big, for example, and the and so very, very common words. There seems to be a bonus for learners to learn that list of the 100 most common words, because they account for 80% of all English. So that's something you might want to look into for your learners. I mean, I'm not recommending that they necessarily memorize the first 1,000 words in English, though I have had students do it. But if they would memorize the first 100 words, and they're everyday words like work, are very important words that would come up in the first year of ESL teaching. Dolch, I think it's the Dolch vocabulary list that you could look for if you wanted to work on lists. But again, memorization is not the sole way to learn vocabulary, but it is something that will help your early learners. So vocabulary comes in various iterations, so to speak. We have basic words that form tier 1 words, like the first 100 words, most frequent words in English. Then we have tier 2 words that are more complex, that might have several meanings, or that might form a grammatical function, a textual function. And we have tier 3 words, which are content words, and academic words, and less commonly used words. So you can look into the work of Isabel Beck, who has done a lot of work on vocabulary tiering, and Coloring Colorado, the website. If you haven't been there, it's an important place to go. They have some interesting things on vocabulary words for English language learners. But let's look for a minute at these tiers. So if you look on the left-hand side, you see some very common words that you know about: work, take away, run, mad, angry, good, right? Stay. All of these are developed from Anglo-Saxon words. If we look across into tier 2, we see a different version of those words. Work becomes labor, take away, remove, run, sprint, angry, rage, good, amazing, right? So you see a difference. Stay, cease. So those are words with French origins. So again, a greater complexity than you're going to find in most languages. And then words that have various meanings, or could perform words that can perform both as nouns and as verbs. So you have labor can be a noun, it can be a verb, right? This doesn't happen in every language, it happens in some languages. Polysemous words with multiple meanings. Trunk, so you have the trunk of the car. In America, in England, you have the boot. You have the trunk of the car, but you have a trunk of a tree. What is the relationship between the trunk of a car and the trunk of the tree? It is absolutely not obvious to the learner. So why is the car called, why is there a trunk in a car and why is there a trunk in a tree? Ring, so we have the ring we wear on our fingers. I put on my ring for this occasion, right? And we have various other types of rings. We have games, circles, this ring around the rosy, right? Where do all these words come from in the learning spectrum? How are your learners going to learn all these multiple meanings? Table, so we have the table we eat on. When we're studying other things, we might have a math table, right? Something students might need for the GED, right? They would have to figure out, something using a math table. You have the periodic tables. You have the word power, right? Power can mean just strength or might, or it can mean exponents in math, or it can mean electricity. So, during a storm, you might lose power. All right, why is that called power? Right? And then also in tier 2, we see words like conjunctions, subordinating and coordinating conjunctions that have a textual function, not so much a meaning that might develop or change. Textual grammatical words tend not to change their meaning, right? They're not open, whereas nouns and verbs and adjectives can see their meaning change. Textual words remain stable. We won't see any more conjunctions, for example. We have the subordinating conjunctions and the coordinating conjunctions. We will never see a new one, never. We might lose some, but we won't gain some, not in English. Whereas we see new verbs every day. We had Google, which was the name of the company, which became the name of a search, and now became a verb to search, to Google something, right? So nouns and adjectives and verbs and some adverbs can change and develop their meaning, and we can get new ones. Really, as we speak, new words are being developed. The Oxford English Dictionary adds new words every year. But this is very challenging for learners as they're coming into a new environment and coming in contact with new terms and so forth. Words which are content words that are less commonly used. Travail instead of work, for example. Extract, remove. Lope, right? A very, something you might see in poetry, for example, these travail or lope. Ire for anger, right? So how are they going to learn those tier 3 words? Well, not at the beginning, but if they're in school or continuing their schooling, these words will definitely come into their sphere of activity, let's say. And then, of course, very specific content words like ecologist, which is from the Greek, tsunami, surrender, treaty, words that are very specific to, say, history or science. So that's tier 3. And if you look at any text, from a textbook, from a novel, from a story, you will see a variety of these things. But in textbooks, you'll see more tier 3 and tier 2 words that might have multiple meanings, polysemous words. So science teachers have told me that they ask their students to record the results of an experiment, but the students were confused because they thought they were thinking of record as a digital thing that they could do on their phone, when in fact they were supposed to write down the results of the experiment. So differentiating vocabulary instruction becomes very important for students who are going beyond, of course, the what you might be doing in adult education, the tier 3 words. And we see a lot of difficulty with students dealing with words that have multiple meanings. So how you're going to teach all of this is hopefully through some interactive activities, but you have to keep in mind that students won't automatically understand that the meaning of the verb, the word has shifted, or that the part of speech of the word has shifted. This is difficult for students to grasp and for you to teach. Under tier 2 difficulty comes some grammatical constructions like the passive voice. Instead of saying Jones and Sons built the boat, you say the boat was built by Jones and Sons. So that is a problem that also has to be dealt with for as writers begin to write more complicated sentences. They may come across these constructions, and they're used to seeing the subject of the sentence be the doer of the verb. In a passive construction, the doer is at the end of the sentence in the prepositional phrase with by, right? So that's difficult for somebody reading. Well, where's the doer? The boat didn't build itself, right? The boat didn't, Jones and Sons built the boat. So, so these are difficulties that come up really on any level of ESL teaching, but certainly from high beginner and beyond, you will have difficulty with homonyms and homophones and some grammatical constructions that aren't your everyday grammatical constructions. Passive voice is learned naturally in the English language in about the 7th grade for native speakers. So it's a more advanced construction even for native speakers. So what's the bottom line here? A lot of times we're not using the right approach for teaching vocabulary. So Stuart Webb has studied vocabulary teaching, and he said that most of vocabulary is being taught in a receptive way, so that the student is receiving it, but not necessarily producing it. For example, teachers may tell the learners the meaning of the word, provide them with a definition, or even use the word in a sentence for them, but they're less likely to ask the student to use an item other than asking them to spell it or pronounce it. So how can we fix this? So looking up words in a dictionary is also receptive, and matching activities are receptive. They have a purpose and they are good, but how can the learner become more actively involved with the words so that the activities are not just receptive, but the learner is actually producing the words? So close activities, which is a fill in the blank type activity, those are important for learners. It shows that the learner is pulling the word out of his mental lexicon somewhere. There are a lot of arguments. How many times does the learner have to hear a word before, or have contact with a word before they learn it? Some people think it might be 200 times. I don't know how anybody is really going to judge that. But if they're not just hearing it, if they're actually using it and using it in their writing or using it in a close exercise, then they are producing it. And if you produce something, it's helping you learn it and retain it. There's no evidence that receptive learning is more effective than productive learning. So although we spend a lot of time on receptive learning, it's absolutely not as effective as productive learning or when the student is producing something. So, sorry. Should we pre-teach vocabulary? We know that we're going to read something with students. Should we pre-teach some of the words? There is evidence that students don't really comprehend a passage unless they know about 90% of the words. It would probably be impossible to pre-teach 90% of the words in a passage, but you know, how do we choose what to teach? What do you think? Do you pre-teach vocabulary? So let me just ask if somebody would like to put in the chat anything they think about pre-teaching vocabulary or what they do to pre-teach vocabulary. Tiffany, if you would look.
Sure.
Should we pre-teach vocabulary?
You can feel free to add a simple yes or no if you'd like to in the chat as well.
Yes.
I heard a whisper that said yes. I don't know who that came from.
I wasn't sure if we were like allowed to talk, so I wanted to, but absolutely, this is amazing because I promise you guys, last night we just had a class on the difficulty of understanding everything, like particularly B, with that being it was really difficult when we were saying instead of he is going to the mall. So absolutely.
And so thank you for that. So we have in the chat, I think it could be useful. We have, 1 second, maybe depends on level. Yes, even just for pronunciation. Isn't it, and here's a question, isn't it more effective for students to learn the meanings in context? I don't usually pre-teach. I hear a no. Yes, pictures are helpful. So we have a little bit of a mix.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I appreciate all of that. You all have good points. There is some cause to pre-teach at least some vocabulary. Can they learn words in context? Yes, that is also the case. So let's look at what Marzano says about the process for teaching words, pre-teaching or not. If you're going to read a longer passage, of course, I think it's good to introduce some of the words in advance. So how do you introduce them and what do you do with them? Marzano is famous for his work on vocabulary for English language learners. So provide a description, explanation, or example of the new term. Picture, if possible. Of course, not all things, if something's abstract, it maybe can't be illustrated, but if it's something that you can represent in a non-linguistic way with a picture, a graphic, some sort of visual, that's great. Ask students to restate the definition, the description, the explanation in their own words. Of course, very early beginners will not be able to do this, but a little bit later on, they should be able to. Ask students to construct a picture, a symbol, or a graphic representing the word. Engage students periodically in activities that help them add to their knowledge of the terms in their notebooks. Periodically ask students to discuss the term with one another. Allow native language if possible, when appropriate. Involve students periodically in games that allow them to play with the terms. So these are 6 fairly simple steps, and I'm sure most of you are using some, if not all of them already. But you could systematize it to make sure that the steps are being followed as you do it. And there are other people who have various ideas, but they basically follow more or less the same procedure. So how do we get them to practice these things actively? Okay, thank you, Tiffany. How do we get them to practice these things actively? They can draw cartoons. We can show them cartoons. They can use graphic organizers. My friend, Bill Zimmerman, who is a journalist, created a famous part of our local newspaper called Kids Day. The newspaper is the Newsday, and he developed a section of the Newsday which would be appealing to kids. But he's also developed the MakeBeliefsComics.com website that can allow students to create their own comic strips using new words. There are visuals. They can there are dialogue bubbles. There are thought bubbles. They can put in new words there, and you can visit this website. We're probably not going to have time to go to it right now. You can visit this website yourself, and you'll see it's also in multiple languages. It's really a great place, a learning territory for online learning. And in person, I sometimes print them out for students, and they can fill in their they can fill in their new words or dialogues that they're creating. Songs and rhymes for any age. I know my older learners always like tongue twisters because it would make everybody laugh that they were trying to fit the words in. So any kind of tongue twisters, alliterative activities, right? I have an activity where I teach modal verbs like should, could, would, can't, can, right? I use a song by Bob Dylan, Blowing in the Wind, and I leave out the modals. And then students have to listen to the song and fill in the modal verbs. So that's something else you can do. You leave blanks in the songs. And then another one, and this type of organizer has had many lives of many practitioners of ESL. Copy the sentence with the new word from the text, explain it, give a new example with the new word, your own example if you can, and draw it. And again, not all words can be drawn, but if it can be. So a huge stumbling block for students are idioms. Idioms are lexical metaphors, so you're all familiar with them. You all use them in your everyday speech. All languages have them, but they don't all have corresponding idioms. So for example, in English, we have still waters run deep, which you know what it means. You know, sometimes a quiet person has a lot of depth, but in Russian, the idiom is that's similar but has a completely darker meaning. In the quiet swamps, devils run around. So you know this. You have to be careful when you use idioms because it may cause some considerable misunderstanding. I had a student who was student teaching, and she was asking the students to do something, and she wanted to make sure they all understood. So she said, are we all on the same page? So the students started looking through their papers to see if they could find the page she was on. They misunderstood what she said. So you have to be careful as a teacher. If you use an idiom, teach it too, because they're just not going to know it. And I have some examples here. Let me just go through the next couple of slides a little more quickly. So word journals, I think they're very successful for students. Encourage them to keep a word journal to monitor their own vocabulary learning. They write the word, they can write their own definition of it, keep a record of it, write if they want, if they have time, write a sentence, whatever it is you want them to put in their word journals. These are very useful. I had a student go from low intermediate to college composition in 2 years using his word journals and studying hard. So all of this is possible, right? Provide textual aids, sentence starters, transition words, the coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, right? Provide these things for students to help them connect. You can learn vocabulary, but you can't use it unless you learn grammar as well, right? So I maybe know 500 words in Spanish, but I can't say a sentence in Spanish because I don't have any Spanish grammar, right? So it's not enough to use vocabulary. How are you connecting those words in sentences? So provide your students with some starters so they can use their vocabulary. If you're in person, you can have word walls, you can have a word or idiom of the day. One of my students went crazy with this idiom. He bought the farm, which means he died. He couldn't believe, he was from Ukraine. He couldn't believe that that could possibly mean he died. Let them pick their favorite new word of the week, right? You don't have to pick it for them. Let them get involved in their favorite new word. What's their best new word? Crossword puzzles. I'm not a fan of crossword puzzles for myself, but some students like them. Word scrambles. This is a novel, the name of a novel here. You could figure it out if you want to. Let them do some word scrambles, just some interacting. That's not particularly productive, but it's just some extra interaction. Word search, and there's a search here, and you can go to discoveryeducation.com and develop word searches. Word magnets is a favorite of mine. You can do them in person if you have magnets or even cards with words on it. There's a word game, I just can't remember it right now, that you can buy where they can put words together in sentences. Word magnets, go to nickpeachy.blogspot.com. He does great stuff with technology and second language learning. Nick Peachy, just Google Nick Peachy and his work will come up, and that's the correct spelling of his name. You can play with word magnets online. You can create poetry, simple poetry with students. Okay, let's see. Word pictures, you can do them in person, or you can on paper, or you can do word pictures. Free the word, right? You know, word pictures, they're used especially in elementary school, but adults can use them too. I found that many adults like to do visual work, artistic work. So, you know, for example, if you were learning the word fish, you would put the word fish inside of a fish shape, right? So any kind of word pictures. I use blogging. I teach my students to blog. I teach graduate students to blog with virtual students, how they would set up their blogs. This is my website. Let me just see if I can share it with you. I can't share it with you right now, but anyway, let me go back to that. Oh no. Sorry, I lost my slide. This is why I shouldn't have been trying to share it with you. Okay, from current slide. Okay. Google Docs for you're working online. So any kind of collaborative work you want the students to write something together, use Google Docs. Online tools like Wordle, which creates they could put a paragraph in that they're reading into Wordle, and the words that appear most frequently come up larger. So that's an interesting thing for them. So anything that they can interact with and get actively involved in. So games are really important for language learning and particularly for vocabulary learning. James Paul G. wrote a book on video games and what you can learn from video games, but he talked about learning principles that are involved in gaming. There are 32 of them. I'm only giving you 3. And you can see that these principles can be an integral part and should be an integral part of your vocabulary teaching. Active and critical learning principle, the semiotic principle, and the practice principle, with really an emphasis on number 3. So how to connect the word, the sign that represents the word, including the spelling, which is, I know, problematic in English, and the practice. So finally, getting to the game, there's a whole list of games that Tiffany has available for you. We're just going to look at the clothing race game. We play this in class with students in person, but Tiffany helped me develop an online game for you to play, which I've never played with my students online. In class, it's a lot of fun. Students are up out of their seats. They're divided into teams. I call out, the teacher calls out the article of clothing. She describes it, or he describes it, by type. Is it a shirt? Is it a pair of pants? Is it a scarf? Is it a shawl? The colors involved, the patterns. Is it checkered? Is it striped? Is it solid? And in class, at least, we can do the fabric type. I'm not sure how the fabric comes across on the screen, but we'll see when we try it on the next slide. And the players in class race to the pile of clothes. I put a big pile of clothes in front of the classroom. They race there and they have to go through the pile of clothes to try to find the correct piece of clothing. And whoever finds it first gets a point from his team, and that's how the game is played. So we're going to present it to you on a slide, so you can't run. Let's see how it comes out. I'm going to call out an article of clothing, describing whatever I can, the type, the color, the patterns, the fabric type, if possible. And you're going to race to put it in the chat box to see who comes up with the number. Each piece of clothing will be numbered. So you're going to come up with the number of the correct piece of clothing. Okay, are you ready? Let me get to the next screen. Okay, so just you can look over everything for a second, which is a little bit more warning than you have when you actually play this in class. And I'm going to say, we're looking for a shirt that is gray and has black flowers and white flowers on it. Put it in the chat box. What number item is it?
Andy Lawrence was there first.
Okay, Andy gets 1 point, but we're probably not going to keep a tally. Okay, good, congratulations. Okay, so we're also looking at something that's probably woolen and striped and beige with brown stripes on it, horizontal stripes.
They're
Anybody?
coming in so quick, it's hard to find, but I think maybe Julie Huff would be the first one.
That's a pair. Okay, Julie Huff, congratulations. Okay, next we're looking at something that's red and black, checkered. It has a zipper. It is a jacket.
Stacy.
Okay, congratulations, Stacy. So far, only 1 point each. Okay, good. We're looking at 3 dresses that are maybe gauze on the outside, and they're white and yellow and pink, hanging on a clothesline.
We have some competitive people here. Andy for his second point.
Okay, all right, that's good. Okay, and then there's gold or yellow colored scarf, warm, probably woolen. Seems to be sort of solid. Maybe there's a pattern there. I can't quite see. Maybe pattern with a little white in the pattern. Woolen wrapped around someone.
Jackie Y with the number 1.
Okay, good. Number 1. Let's see. And then we have something that has diagonal stripes. It's green with a darker green and a lighter green, and it's a tie, a necktie.
Jackie Y again with her second point.
Oh, okay. Gee. Some people are very fast. Okay. But you can see how, I hope you can see how much fun this is in person. And then we have a solid cotton t-shirt that's red, or maybe orange. Fire red, maybe.
Jackie Y again with her third point.
Okay, yeah. So we have a winner, it looks like. Too bad we don't have a prize. Okay, so well, I'll do 2 more, and then I think you have the idea. We still have time, right, Tiffany?
We have 2 minutes. I
2
didn't know if you
minutes.
want to leave space for questions.
Okay, all right. So all right, let's just have to do there's a sneaker that's green, dark green, with logo on the side and white white shoestrings.
Yeah, I apologize if I don't pronounce your name correctly. You can correct me. It's Abebech. 1 point for you. Congratulations.
Okay, so we have a winner to our game, and in person, of course, it's great because students can get up and run around and have a little bit of a break from sitting at their desks. And also they get to feel the fabrics. So if they're not terribly familiar with the names of types of fabrics like wool, silk, cotton, or whatever, they would also get to feel them. So there is a kind of hands-on learning involved there, or tactile learning. So we have the handout that you'll be looking at in the post section. And we have some references here for you that I've included, the makebelievescomics.com. And there's an etymology dictionary. This is for you more than for your students. If you're interested in learning the origins of some of the English words that you teach, if there's something there you might want to share with your students. So that's a resource for you. And the work of Jim Cummins is worthwhile reading if you're not familiar with him. He's a Canadian educator who is very active in the world of bilingual education and the origin of the terms BICS and CALP, basic interpersonal communication skills, which many of you are teaching, versus cognitive academic language proficiency, which you're teaching if you're in a school or college setting, community college setting. So he has a lot of resources. This is just one of them. And this is also the link to James, not a link, but the reference James Paul G's work, What Video Games Have to Teach Us About Learning and Literacy. So hopefully those things are, those sources are interesting to you. And I did mention Coloring Colorado, which is very worthwhile site with a lot of things in Spanish as well as English. So that's it. So is there anything you would like to ask me? I will try to answer if I can.
Yes, and as you're thinking about your questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat or say them out loud. But I just want to share the two links that I dropped in the chat. The first one is the handout that Dr. Jackie was referring to. And this is also the handout that we will use for the next optional half an hour, so we can talk about how we could bring those activities to the virtual classroom. I've also dropped in a link, a survey, so we can get your feedback on today's workshop. If you'll please take 2 to 3 minutes to complete that, your feedback is really valued and it helps us continue our professional development moving forward. So in the meantime, in the last 3 minutes, if anyone has any questions for Dr. Nenchin or Dr. Jackie, please feel free to unmute and ask.
Just Jackie is fine.
Okay, Jackie. In the chat, it says, thank you. Sorry, I have to leave. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. It gave me some new ideas to use with my students. That's from Stacy Z.
Oh, you're so welcome. I hope so. I hope it has some ideas for you. Good.
Thank you so much for your presentation from Bernetta.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. So I'm just going to remove this spotlight. And I just want to say from Mikhail to all of you, happy holidays. If we're not able to connect again before the holidays get going, more of the holidays get going. But thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing all of you in the new year. Rest, relax. Hopefully you'll get some time with family and some time to rejuvenate. Thank you all for being here. If you need to leave now, that's fine. You can feel free to unmute and say bye. For those of you who are interested in staying from 1 to 3:30, wait, 1 to 3:30, no, 1 to 1:30. From 1 to 1:30, we'll have a little informal idea sharing session where we'll go over this handout and think of how we could make these virtual. So thank you. Feel free to unmute.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you so much for attending. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're getting some great feedback. And Miss Jackie, if you could unshare
Unshare. Okay.
or stop sharing.
Stop share. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. Sorry about that.
No worries. You're good. Let's see here. So we'll just take another minute for people to file out, and then we'll get into that session. Thank you so much, Miss Jackie. You're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat. Great presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for the resources. Yes, the recording will be available.
That's good. I hope.
Okay, so I guess this is our group that's staying on. Ms. It's a habit for me to say miss.
It's okay.
Jackie, if you'd like to stay, we'd love to have you, but we understand if you need to go. But thank you so
I'm
much
just
for
gonna go for a minute. Maybe I'll check back in. If I can,
Okay.
I'll check back in. I have a few things to do, but I'll be right back if I can.
Okay, sounds good. No, thank you so much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you, Tiffany, for all your help. You were great.
Of course.
Very helpful too. Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, hi, everybody. So this is a more informal ideas sharing session for those who are still planning to teach online and want to think about how we could convert some of these ideas to the online classroom. So let me just get a count of how many of us are here. It's that 3, 6, 9. Okay. So I'm going to drop this document in the chat again. Halima, that's fine. Thank you, Halima.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye,
You too.
everyone.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording here.